Thank you, everybody, for attending. Welcome to the first of our series of webinars focused on the preparation of website redesigns or designs. I'm Jesse McCabe. I'm the co-founder of Solid Digital. We've been in business for 14 years, started in 2007. And before that, I was a director at an agency in Los Angeles. And I had been building websites as long as you could create them. The first website I ever did for a company was back in 1995 for an Amish furniture company of all things in Arcola, Illinois, which is close to where I grew up. Out of my years of experience, I have become very passionate about finding ways to create value for organizations through their websites. I love learning about businesses and then ultimately figuring out how their website can be an asset for them. I think, you know, when I was a little kid, I loved the little segments on Sesame Street where they showed like how crayons were made and that kind of stuff. And I still have the same interest when I'm talking to our clients or prospects about their businesses and finding ways that people are doing creative things in the world. We've built a team that is pretty much cut from the same cloth as I am. And the reason why we wanted to do these webinars is because one of our core values is honest guidance, and thought it'd be worthwhile to share some of the things that we do or that we go through when we're in the process of a website redesign. And in this case, for this segment, we're going to be focused on specifically the process of finding the right partner and some of the things that we observe kind of on the other side of the table as our clients are looking for a web partner. We're not going to showcase any of our work or that a style of website is better than another. Just going to try to share some of our experiences and some of the things that we've learned. There are so many awesome agencies out there, and there's definitely not a one size fits all. So this presentation is really focused on some of the things that we've noticed in our business, and hopefully it'll help you find the right partner for your organization. I do have Jessica, Marla, and Diana from our team to help and facilitate questions. So if you have any questions, just pop them up in the Q&A chat. I think it should be down below. This is our first time doing a Zoom webinar, so could be wrong. And I'll just try and pause if there's any questions that arise as we're going through. So let's get started. Just to give you a little more insight into our point of view, on average, we're doing about 30 website designs a year. We do not take every opportunity that comes to us, and I would say we're a little bit picky on who we work with. So we have a pretty strong close rate. We know the groups that we want to work with, and most of our clients have gone through a website redesign before, so they know the process and they understand it. It is one of the things that we look for when we're talking to potential clients. And the majority of our primary stakeholders are marketing directors or somebody that's in a similar role as a marketing director. So let's just start from the beginning, and if you can put this in the Q&A chat if you want, but why do organizations redesign their website? And here are some of the things that we hear from prospects as to why they're redesigning their website. Take a look at that, see if any of them resonate. I personally believe the most important reason is for brand portrayal. Unless you're doing large traditional brand campaigns, I think your website, for all intents and purposes, is your brand, and it's going to be the place where people learn about who you are and what your organization is about. And I feel like your website should be growing with your brand, and it should not feel like your website is off or behind what your brand is. And in fact, in many cases, we try to push the brand a little bit forward on their website so they can kind of catch up and feel like it's more aspirational. but there's a ton of reasons why a company might consider a redesign. And so let's dive into some of the things that you might want to consider when you are ready. So it's a process, and everybody has their own process. I think the first and foremost thing, and this is just the way that we kind of do things internally, anyways, is to write a brief. Do an overview of why it's time for your organization to do a website redesign. Do a pro con list, to highlight some of the things that are working in your existing website that you don't want to lose, and things that need to be improved. And then start to think about, like, what are the must haves and nice to haves. We always like to ask, like, one of our first questions that we ask to a new opportunity is, what strategic things are happening in your organization over the next year. And they may not be related to your website, they may not even be related to your brand necessarily, but, like, what are some of the big things that are happening that your leadership team is talking about and trying to set as goals. Knowing from a high level, like, what is happening within an organization is really helpful for us, especially when we start thinking about and putting a strategy together for the website. And it gives us an opportunity to kind of think outside of the typical parameters for a website. I think it's really important, the the experienced buyers, I'll say, have really, like, determined who the team is going to be in selecting the partner. So, I think this should also be included in your brief so everybody's aware. But determine the point of contact, which I assume would be you, or the person that's going to be reaching out initially, and then who the other players are. Be clear on the final decision maker, so that if you get into an even vote, make sure that people understand, like, what the expectations are for them in the different meetings you're going to have with your agencies. And yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about those meetings in the evaluation phase of this presentation. So, define your success metrics. This is something that I would say is atypical. We don't usually have this provided to us, but we always ask it. We try to dig into and figure out what could be used as a KPI or set of KPIs for the project. I'm a big believer in what gets measured gets done. I use that phrase all the time. I believe that if we know what it is we're going to be measured upon, then we can have a better sense of what's important to work through, and have a clearer idea of what our strategy is going to be. I mean, in general, like, I think we run a lot of our projects and programs and even internal initiatives through a set KPI, and it just seems to keep the team on track, knowing exactly how things are all bubbling up into one or a small set of metrics. The other thing I figure I mentioned is the SEO side. Everybody is focused on search and how people are going to find their website. We will run reports for a client or prospect before we start meeting with them, just to see what we can see in terms of their search visibility. However, I think that it's not always indicative of what the client is looking for. So being able to list out your top 10, 15, 20 keywords that you think are going to be important for your brand is really valuable for us, so that even if they don't show up on our report, we know what we're going to be working towards. And if you determined your KPIs, please try to measure their current values. One of the important things on that "what gets measured gets done" concept is that the measurements can easily be reported against. So as well, I think, compiling a monthly report of general website analytics is important. So, visits, goal tracking, bounce rates, those are things that we'd be very interested in seeing how or evaluating how a site's performance currently is. And then research. I think this is one of the things that we can really tell when somebody's reaching out to us, whether or not they've done their research. So a recent uh, HubSpot report claimed that the typical savvy buyer has answered 50%, 56% of their own questions prior to even connecting with the sales side of a vendor. And so I think it's really important to spend some time doing this before you just go out and send out requests for proposals. And first of all, I know design is going to always be a huge consideration when you're looking at a creative agency for your website. I personally believe that the agency's website tells you a lot about them. Um, in our projects and the work that we do and the work that we showcase on our site, those are always going to be influenced in some way or another by the client and what the client's needs are and what the client's tastes are and their brand. So they're good to look at, and it's good to see the way that we adapt brands. But because of a design decision that was made for a client, I don't think it necessarily shows exactly what we want to show. And so I know in our case, like we want our we there are no like things tying us to anything when it comes to our site. Are we are completely influencing the outcome, and it's us in our pure form. um, you know, of course, if it looks outdated uh, or seems like it's a cobbler's kids kinds of situation on an agency website, I I get it. I've been in that situation before, but I do think it kind of speaks to the priorities and their ability to be proactive and really showcase like what they care about, which is should be website design. I don't think any agency wants a bad looking website. Um, I think looking for the clues to their technology of choice is important. Usually, we will use our own website to be built with the technology that we choose. Builtwith.com is a great way to look at how what technology an agency or even anybody is using on their website. Um, and then other things that I look at, and as I'm creeping our competitors, uh, LinkedIn I think is a great resource. Take a look at like the agency team, look at their leaders, look them up on LinkedIn. Gives you a sense of like how long the leadership's been part of the agency. In some cases, like as I was doing research for this presentation, I saw some of the agencies, the leaders did not have the agency listed as their employer, and so that should bring up some potential questions on the legitimacy of the team. Um, but I think it gives you an overall sense of who they are and what their background is. I think Clutch has also been a great resource for the the clients that come in who have gone through our profile on Clutch, have a better understanding of who we are prior to meeting with us. Clutch has a lot of information. The review process is way more stringent than most, and they even like if we have a client that's going to do a review on Clutch, they have to go through a phone interview and screening process on Clutch to make sure that what they're saying is legit. And so I highly recommend looking through Clutch at potential agencies. Um, and then finally, well, not finally, Glassdoor I think is also important. Uh, Gives you a sense of what the employees are like, the overall culture of the organization, and culture is really important to us when it comes to like this partnership. And I'll go into that more. And then obviously their blog. If they haven't posted anything in a year, that's a bad sign. I think most agencies aren't doing that, but make sure that they're talking and having opinions about what's happening in the industry, and showcasing like some of the things that they think is cool, and it gives you an opportunity to read some of the content that some of the people that you're going to probably be talking to have made, and it's a really nice uh, conversation starter in early meetings. I know we like really appreciate it when somebody comes on and says, "Hey, I read this article about this, and really liked what you had to say." Um, and yeah, sorry, we had a couple of other people hop in. So if you have any questions along the way, please make sure to use the Q&A button down at the bottom, and be happy to answer anything as we go. So uh, RFP process, and I know this is I don't think anybody likes doing RFPs. I don't think clients like writing them, and frankly, I don't think we like following them. Um, it really has like kind of an impersonal uh, guide where we don't really get a chance to meet with each other. And I think the more strict of an RFP, the harder it is to really evaluate, what it's going to be like working between both teams. So while I'm technically anti-RFP, I mean, we're answering RFPs all the time. I realize it's the way we do business. I do have some opinions on the way to approach this. I think in a way that it is beneficial to both parties. It's a little bit different than your kind of typical, RFP submissions will be allowed between this date and this date, and questions will be answered between these dates. I'll try not to. I'll try not to approach this with too much of my own bias, but and timeline. And I'm going to speak to this a little bit more, but I think rather than setting that hard schedule, like I just said, try to create a schedule that allows you to run them individually with the agencies, and give yourself and them their own kind of like timeline. And this does happen a lot organically. A lot of times what happens is, we came in late to an RFP, and so they make some exceptions for us. But I think if you don't set yourself up to have a set milestone for these different parts of the RFP, it allows you to be more flexible in the way that you're going to communicate and work with the potential prospects. And to that point, I think defining your process is really important. I know a lot of clients schedule groups so that one day they're going to be meeting with all of these different agencies. I think that it's always better when you're not piling them up and trying to do them back to back to back. And it gives the other side, agencies like us, the opportunity to show you how we manage process and how we will, follow through and be proactive. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And that we're, willing to lead the discussions and can navigate your schedule. That's one of the things that I talk a lot about when we're just starting a new project, is making sure that we understand everybody's and the stakeholder, what their schedules are like and how we can work around them. So we're happy to oblige by that. We have a pretty strict, or not, I shouldn't say strict. We have a process that we like to follow in our sales opportunities, and we actually created this illustration of it. And so a lot of times, when a client doesn't necessarily have a process for their RFP and for their search, we'll share this so they have a sense of, this is how we do things, and we can keep you on track here. This is kind of the expectation in time. If this works for you, great. And I would say the majority of the time, the client actually is relieved that they don't have to think about it, that we're going to kind of keep everything on track. Like I had mentioned before, make sure you're sharing your KPIs and analytics and goals in the RFP. I don't think you need to go overboard with data. I've had RFPs where they like send us like this table report of database data. We don't need that. But it's really important for us to see what those metrics and KPIs are that are important to you. So again, going back to the same things that you've written in your brief, make sure that they're in your RFP. Make sure that the agency is aware of what you're going to be focused on. And then that allows us to make sure that we are asking the right questions and thinking about your goals and how to achieve them as we get into later conversations. Um, you know, specifying your limitations, obviously, this is important. I'll talk a little bit more about budget later, but it's great when we know what clients are looking to spend. Sometimes they may not be aware of what the standard costs are for a new website, especially if an agency is doing it, and they can vary greatly. I know it. The more research you can do beforehand to get like a sense of how long the project is going to be should give you a sense of cost. I mean, agency costs here in Chicago range from $100 an hour to $200 an hour, and so at the bottom of that, at $100 an hour, a 3-month project would end up costing $50,000 if there's a fully utilized resource for that entire time. So I think having a decent understanding of like what the market costs and budgets are for a standard branded website is really important. Um, and then the other thing was technologies. So most agencies, like they've got a probably experience with a variety of technologies, but if there's complex integrations or specific platforms that need to be used to integrate with your website, be sure to specify them, make it clear why you might not be able to entertain other solutions. It's really, really valuable to know that. Give them the opportunity to be creative. In a recent proposal, we had somebody actually ask us, if we had 25,000 extra dollars in our budget, what would you do with it? And it was the first time it was asked of us, and I thought it was fantastic. I mean, they gave us a couple of days to think about it and answer it. We came up with some ideas. I think it really showcased like what we think in terms of our offerings is the most valuable parts of our service, and it gave us an opportunity to really be creative for them during the process. And I think it was a great question. I've actually pushed other prospects that we're talking to allow us the opportunity to do something similar, but it was definitely different and way awesome that the client proactively asked us that question. All right, so a couple of things not to do in the RFP. Again, these are just these opinions. We just had this happen yesterday. We were talking to a new prospect, and they did not have a budget, and they didn't really know what to say in terms of their range. I just know that if they have not determined kind of like a good sense of where things are going to land, then they haven't really had conversations with their behind the scenes stakeholders, right? And that means that there's going to be more conversations even after we present our proposal to them. And it doesn't feel as real of an opportunity. And so a lot of times in these situations, like if somebody can't tell us what their budget is or what a good budget is, then we're reluctant to participate. And we'll push to talk to the other stakeholders so we can hear their expectations and talk a little bit more about what it costs and why it might cost something to do the work that we're going to do. But if we're not allowed to talk to the other stakeholders, then I would say that that's probably a non-starter for us. This kind of goes back to the $25,000 budget question I mentioned above, but I think not over specifying is also a good idea. we'll get these RFPs where somebody's really like put a lot of thought into all these different modules that they need on their site and how things are going to be integrated, and they're kind of solving all of the problems beforehand because they think it's going to be really helpful for the agency to understand that. And sometimes it is. I'm not going to say it isn't, but we had a customer that delivered a 30-page RFP with all this detail, and when we looked at the problem that they were trying to solve, we felt like there was an alternate solution that we had, and then it took a couple of meetings for us to work through kind of the strategy that we had and our approach. And in the end, they went with our approach, but it probably could have saved someone a lot of time if they just left out those details and gave us the opportunity to do what we do, which is support our clients and come up with that type of solution. So finally, after you've reached out to these potential agencies and you've gotten the proposals, how do you evaluate? This may be more about like how we evaluate clients on our side. I think relationships are key. They're the culture fit of a client and us is the most important thing. We've been involved in hundreds of website projects, and while it's really hard to determine what client or what project's going to be successful, I can tell you that when we feel like there's a really great culture alignment between us and our customer, that it's a great prediction for the successful outcome of the site. The primary question that we always ask when we get off an intro call is, do you think that they're a culture fit? So I think it's really important. It's a big part of our evaluation when we're looking at new clients. I also believe that a well-organized agency that delivers great product is also going to have a well-organized sales process. And so I think just seeing how their sales team communicates is a really great sign in looking at how they're going to deliver. I can assume that depending on your needs, you may want to look for, like a pragmatic, solutions-focused sales process instead of, a highly produced pitch. But on the other hand, if you're looking for like a high, flashy designed website, you may want something that's very creative and unique. But I think it's good to get a sense and look at the process as you went through the sales journey together and how they handled themselves. I think it's very insightful in the way that they're going to deliver. Proactiveness, right? Evaluate their proactiveness. So if you're gonna be evaluating the agency's ability to manage your project and for all intents and purposes manage you, I'd try to leave some opportunity. Oh, my camera. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, my camera went off.
Yes.
After a meeting, leave some opportunity for them to determine next steps, if possible. And just a reminder, we're going through this process every single day. So we've got a lot of experience. While our clients are probably doing this once every few years, this is something that we do all the time. And so giving us the opportunity to kind of go through our process is I think a good thing. Management skills for again, I think the sales process is indicative of their project management process. So being able to have a clear, established, documented way of doing things, that they have listed out the way that they are going to be managing their projects, that they have a process, that they're how they handle deadlines, and that there's a lot of detail in the proposal is going to show you, a lot, kind of reading between the lines on how it's going to be managed when you actually get into production. And I think if you have any doubts, ask to speak or meet one-on-one with the production director or the senior project manager to get more clarification on how things are going to be run, how communication is handled. It's really important. I think one of the things that we we see is we rush into a deal and get things going, and then we're learning about each other in the first couple of weeks. And I think the more time that we all spent during this evaluation period in the sales process will actually give us a kind of a head start and be able to hit the ground running if we understand and know how we work. And then I think it's really important to look out for over promises. There's new digital agencies popping up every day. There's a lot of groups that are out there looking to prove themselves, and they're going to make promises, and they're going to be difficult to keep. I've lost many opportunities because the winning agency said that they were going to be able to deliver on a date that we just didn't feel like was realistic, or it was rushing something that we didn't feel like should be rushed, and we didn't budge on it. And I always tend to try to check back on those dates, and I've yet to see somebody actually be able to deliver in a time when we said that we didn't think it was going to be possible. And then, most importantly, and I know this is probably the toughest one, but like I said in the beginning, your website is potentially your brand's biggest asset. So making sure your leadership is aligned with the agency leadership, I think, is worth the time. Unless you're a huge organization, and even in those cases, I think there's going to be a VP level person that is worth taking some time and meeting, even one-on-one with the other leaders. I know that leaders are reluctant to do this, and I assume that they're not going to want to meet with 10 agencies. But when you get down to your top 3, I think it's worth it. And I think it goes back to setting the roles and expectations early in the process in that brief, and getting buy-in that, hey, this is going to be something that we're going to do. It's very, very common for us to not meet a primary stakeholder, so that behind the scenes stakeholder, until the proposal presentation. And we've built up a rapport with the marketing director. We've built a strategy and an approach that is aligned with the marketing director. But then, the SVP comes into the conversation, and they're seeing it for the first time. They're hearing our pitch for the first time. And then, conversations start happening on the call between the marketing director and their boss. And then it's obvious that not everybody's on the same page. And for us, this is a red flag. It's, like, what is the process going to be like when we get into production, when we're waiting on the client to give us their feedback, and how, is it always going to be this process of working towards a solution and then, getting to leadership and the solution is turned away. So, this is really key. And that's it. So I don't think I saw any questions come through, but if you guys have anything, please open the floor to answer anything. Hopefully there's some nuggets in there that I gave you. I'm trying to figure out why my video went off. Let's see if I can get back on. There we go.
Maybe, Jesse, while people are thinking, could you just touch on how long that sales process would typically take?
Yeah. So let me see if I can find the slide. Oop. Where is it? Oh, darn.
You're almost there.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Um, oh my gosh, I can't. Jessica, are you there? I can't actually see the screen. Do you want to talk through the different elements?
Yeah, for sure. So for us, we'll schedule an intro call after the initial email inquiry. And then from the intro call, we schedule what we call an assessment meeting. And that's where we pull in subject matter experts from our team. So it'll be like our creative director, our technology director, digital strategist. And then we ask for, on the prospect side, for them to include any stakeholders from their team. So that's the meeting where we dive a little bit deeper into what your pains are, what your goals are, what your overall business objectives are. So from the intro call to the assessment meeting, it's typically about, it'll be a couple of days or a week after, depending on, the urgency of that. And then from the assessment call, it'll take us about 1 week to deliver a proposal. And we don't just shoot it over via email. We schedule a call with you during that assessment meeting so that we can walk you through our proposal presentation and give you the context and answer questions in real time. So we'll do that typically a week after an assessment meeting. And then if all goes well with the proposal presentation, it usually takes about 1 to 2 weeks after proposal is presented for approval. So in between a proposal presentation and getting sign off on a contract, that's usually where, we're talking about scope changes. We're talking about it being run through legal. So that typically takes about 1 to 2 weeks. Obviously, some people have longer legal approval, but typically the 2 weeks is sufficient. And then from approval of a contract to project kickoff, we need about 2 weeks, and that's where we're doing our internal client onboarding. So that's where we're prepping the team on our side. It's a digestion of information for the production team. So everything we learned during the sales process, we want to make sure that's handed over to our production team, and we're scheduling things out like our resourcing and getting your timeline together, and then we schedule that kickoff. So from an intro call to a project kickoff, it would take about 4 weeks for everything, or 4 to 6 weeks. Yeah,
So there you go. Thank you.
no problem.
Okay, so there were no other questions. Our next webinar is actually on the 27th of January. We're going to be focused more on the design considerations and some of the things that we go through in our initial phases, looking at design and how website and the brand all kind of fit together. So but we did get one question. Sorry,
Yeah.
before we go,
Yeah.
but yeah, we'll send out another invite for the next webinar. So Rosie's asking, what's your agency's experience and strategies of guiding newbie clients to work with you? Like they just started their businesses, have limited experiences of finding agencies or agency to work together. I mean, this is more common than not. And in fact, like a lot of times we will have a client, I'm thinking about like an opportunity they're working on right now where they have a website, they've been in business for 20 years, but they've never worked with an agency, and their website is just something that has kind of been there with some internal person just kind of keeping it up to date, and it's not really like a intentful site. So I think that our assessment meetings, we have a lot of questions. They're pretty standard questions for our websites that we ask. We actually could share this. It goes through the buyer journey, like why somebody buys with the organization, what the kind of steps are, how they currently find you, and just asking more questions just from a business perspective of what how you're doing business. And then we do a lot of education. It's like talking about, this is the way that we connect the dots with what your organization does and how you're going to be presented on your website. We talk a lot about, like, what are the most important things we want people to do when they come there? How do we keep users focused on what it is we're driving them to do? And so helping them understand the way that we think about strategy as it applies to a website, I think is really important when they haven't gone through the process before. And I will say, like, you know, it is in the opportunity stage, it is more likely that they have not had the experience. Most of the clients that we actually end up working with have gone through the experience of working with an agency. And I think a lot of that is because we already have kind of a shared language. So if a client is open to understanding and getting them to be aware of the way that we work, that's really important. Thanks for asking that question. All right, I think we're kind of out of time, but I really appreciate everybody who joined. We're really excited about doing these webinars. We have, you know, because of the pandemic, we've had the opportunity to spend a lot more time with people on video calls, and so it's a great opportunity to get to know everybody, and we will follow up with a survey. So please give us any feedback and let us know what we can do, or if there's any topics that you wish to have us discuss in the future. But thanks a lot.